Okay, here we go. Yes. Hi there, Kristen. How are you? We have a big program in store. I want to let me do this, and we're going to go there, and we're going to start with the latest from NBC News.
First time NBC News is reporting new details about one of two notes sent to media outlets regarding Nancy Guthrie's abduction. According to three people familiar with the matter, the second note indicated the 84-year-old had died. It did not contain an apology or any request for payment for the release of her body. After that note was sent, Savannah and her siblings posted this message.
We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
That note was sent just days after media outlets received an alleged ransom note saying Nancy was safe and demanding cryptocurrency in exchange for her release. Investigators involved in the case believe the notes are potentially credible, a sentiment shared by Savannah.
There are a lot of different notes, I think, that came, and I think most of them, it's my understanding, are not real. I believe the two notes that we received, that we responded to, I tend to believe those are real.
Months later, investigators are still trying to identify this masked man seen on Nancy's Nest camera the night she was taken. The Pima County Sheriff's Office says Google, which owns Nest, has retrieved hundreds of other images from cameras around her house, but nothing more showing anything suspicious.
Okay,
Liz Bush
again,
joins us now live in studio. So, Liz, of course, our thoughts and prayers are still
let's
with
play
Savannah
this out a
and
little
her
bit.
family. The big question tonight: what does this mean for the investigation now?
Well, unfortunately, Tom, not much. Bottom line, this case is still unsolved. There's been no major break in this case, no new developments. The family, Savannah says they are still in agony, hoping for answers. They are still asking the public for help. And remember, there is still that $1 million reward they're offering for any information that leads to Nancy.
Can't imagine what they're still going through. All right, Liz.
All right. Again, this is a lot of new information. We're going to break it down. I want to go through, and I can understand why there's a lot to get to. We're in no rush. I'm also very glad we're going to be joined by my friend Jamie Copenhaver next hour. But I want to walk through a little bit. Again, we're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. You can. Hi there. Yes. Hello, chat. The Guthrie case. There's a lot to unpack here. I want to walk through it. And the new information we have. Now, there are some discrepancies within the reporting because some outlets are reporting that there was almost some kind of an apology. I want to back up just for a moment. This seems to be the most credible scenario that played out. And I know some people may not get that, but this was an abduction. This was either at least one person, and there you see the person they captured in the mask in the Nest cam, possibly another one, could have been a lone wolf, but at least one. I think, again, people can have different thoughts on it, but let's just stay with what we know. Certainly one individual sends the ransom note to the family and then also that local TV station. Now, this is significant. Why is it coming out now? To me, this was a decision by the FBI. We're going to talk about this with Jamie. I've obviously been on the phone last night, today. But the FBI basically felt, see, this is why you don't give out all the information all at once. Because look at how much suddenly, as it's totally dying down, and then boom, it's thrust back into the spotlight. So you don't empty your barrels, so to speak. The note demanded $4 million in crypto. There's several different aspects of this. And again, we'll talk to Jamie, but here's what I know. If you're the FBI, you don't pay. Hi there, Chris Ham. You don't pay. And I know some people, I've already seen people saying, well, they should have paid and then trace it. Number one, there's no guarantee that you'd be able to trace if you paid the $4 million. They wanted $4 million in crypto. There's no guarantee. So then you pay it, and what? That's one reason you don't pay. Number two, there was no proof of life. Now, some people say you just pay it regardless. I'll tell you why the FBI doesn't want to do it. And I did speak with former FBI this morning. And there's Janet Dwyer. And one of the reasons why, there's Debbie. We got everybody here. One of the reasons, listen, this is a form of terrorism. This individual, the people behind this is a form, it's terrorist activity. If you pay, you don't negotiate with terrorists. If you pay, there'll be more kidnappings, not less. So now ultimately they'll tell the family, from what I understand, it's your decision what you want to do. But without proof of life, without any credible proof of life, there's no guarantee you're going to get her back or get her back alive. Now, a couple of things. I've noticed some different reporting. Let's step back for a moment. The station in Tucson, they had the ransom note. The FBI asked them not to release it. So those that are going after Sheriff Nanos, this is the part of the investigation he's not really part of. The FBI took the lead in this. The FBI seemingly, here's what you need to know. The FBI is basically making the decision. Let's let some information out that we know about the ransom notes and see if that stirs up anything. Right? Now, who knows what else they have, but obviously they're running out of options. They don't have a suspect. They don't have a vehicle. The Nanos people are not making any developments. So the FBI, none of this would be happening unless the FBI said to the station in Tucson or said to, confirming it for national media. Now, obviously, that's Savannah's station. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to play the piece from NBC, because, and she did go on, and it's very tearful. And she said, she's not part of the coverage. She has to sit there as they're running the piece. I mean, it's very awkward. But I want to come back to, I believe it's very clear that this was an abduction by at least this person, maybe someone else, maybe another person. I don't think so. I think one person could carry it out. But both CBS News is reporting that both the two ransom notes that they believe were legit, they came from, I believe, the same computer, and they believe they were written by the same person. So that's very, very significant. I know some people are getting caught up with this business of whether or not they apologized. So it seems consistent reporting that in the second note, they were not seeking money. They were, in essence, letting the family, know that it just didn't work out, that she was no longer with them, or with us, I should say. So I want to play that. CBS. Now, again, I want you to understand what's missing here. Pima County Sheriff, they haven't responded on this. And Nanos has talked about that the FBI is kind of taking the lead as far as the ransom notes. So let me play. This was the CBS package, and I've been tracking it. TMZ says there was no apology. And then, another outlet says they basically said, sorry, they say died of natural causes. It's more like she died in captivity. And then she's buried in nature. So, but this was the CBS report.
Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, missing since February 1st. Over the months, the FBI has taken seriously at least 2 notes tied to the case, including one we can now report that claimed Nancy Guthrie had died. CBS News correspondent Jonathan Vigliotti has details.
This is the only way we will have peace.
Tonight, we're revealing the contents of a note Savannah Guthrie was responding to in this video recorded on February 7th during the search for her kidnapped mother, Nancy.
We received your message and we understand.
Sources tell CBS News the note, believed to have come from her alleged kidnapper, claimed Nancy Guthrie was dead.
We beg you now to return our mother to us.
The message was the second of two notes sent to the family in the first week following Nancy Guthrie's kidnapping on February 1st. The first note was sent one day after a doorbell camera captured this masked man appearing to tamper with the camera in the moment before Guthrie vanished. It demanded millions of dollars in cryptocurrency in exchange for Nancy Guthrie's return. The Guthrie family responded, initially hopeful she was alive. Instead, that second message arrived. The family took both notes seriously because they were written in the same language and style and came from the same computer address.
You know, that is very significant. And I haven't seen that reported enough. Same computer address. So there's several things about this that I want people to recognize. And proof of life is a must. But one of the things that comes out of this is, and people, I think a lot of people are unfamiliar with this, and we have this idea that everything can be traced. But what's very clear to me is there are ways to set up crypto accounts that can't be traced. And there's also a way that you can send emails that also can't be traced. I think that's very significant. Written in the similar language and style. Now, they have experts at this, and that's what they examined. But that's possibly from the same computer. That's really significant. I was talking to a member of law enforcement that said, you know, they one time were dealing with some kidnappers where there were two of them. One of them would write one line, and then the second one would write the next line. And they kept doing that, thinking that was going to throw it off. But from my understanding, the FBI immediately could tell it was the handwriting of two different people. But they somehow thought that that was going to help them. But I think that's really significant. Now, notice also what's really important here is the first note about the 4 million in crypto. That came the next day. That came the next day. And then the second one, and I think I want to stress the second one, they weren't asking for money. They were informing the family that basically she was no longer alive.
Appearing to tamper with the camera in the moment before Guthrie vanished. It demanded millions of dollars in cryptocurrency in exchange for Nancy Guthrie's return. The Guthrie family responded, initially hopeful she was alive. Instead, that second message arrived. The family took both notes seriously because they were written in the same language and style and came from the same computer address, according to several sources. Investigators are treating both notes as credible and are still working to determine who sent them. In the weeks that followed, video messages from the Guthries that once spoke of Nancy's safe return shifted in tone.
We are offering a family reward of up to $1 million for any information that leads us to her recovery.
It's been 141 days since Nancy Guthrie disappeared, and not a single tip has led to her or her abductor. As for the DNA recovered from her home, the crime scene, it is still being analyzed and tested, and so far, there have been no positive hits.
You know, I met Jonathan when I was out there. He's a good reporter. Again, we're going to walk through. I think I'm going to go live tonight as well. I wanted to wait to see how a lot of this kind of pans out, and we are getting a sense of it. I know some people may not recognize the significance. This is a lot of new information. And I also want to, I am torn about, I'm not convinced this is the proper time or right time to go back out there. I've thought of it. I did speak with a neighbor. Here's good news. So As many of you that followed when I was on the ground out there for 2 months, right? Right after this happened and then for 2 months. I didn't have a problem with the neighbors, and they clearly didn't have a problem with me. But one of the neighbors that I was in touch with, they use their Catalina Foothills home as a winter retreat. And right now they go to Oregon in the summertime, Oregon coast. So anyhow, only reason I mention this is they have said you can stay at our house and then you could walk around and you don't have to worry about parking. You don't have to worry about hotel. Again, they're a lovely couple. I even met, two of their grown children. They said, we really liked your coverage. You were always respectful. You could stay at our house for free and then stay there. And then you could, walk around and do whatever. And then they even said, we'll contact the sheriff's office and let them know that you basically would be considered a neighbor. I don't know. I'm not there yet. We shall see. But this is a lot. And there's more that I want to get into because I notice that different media outlets have different reporting on this. But what's very significant about this is crystallizing that this was a kidnapping plot gone wrong. This was an abduction. And I come back to, I think it was that November Today Show at Charo, where you had Savannah and Nancy and Annie, and it was live on the Today Show in November. And I believe that set the wheels in motion to someone like, wow, that lady lives around here and she lives alone. I actually caught, everyone does their own coverage. And someone sent me someone who was saying, why Nancy and why not Annie and blah, blah, blah. Well, Annie and Tommaso have a child. And Annie and Tommaso's home, which I've been to several times and actually broadcast in front of, but they're not as secluded. You got to remember, Nancy lived alone. She lived alone with no dog and no alarm and no street lights. It's not as dark in Annie's neighborhood. I didn't get the whole rationale of why this person and not this one. I mean, if someone was asking me, and let alone, as I demonstrated in that neighborhood, so secluded that it even stood out to me how secluded it was, right? No one directly next door, no one directly across the street. Pretty hidden. I want to stay on schedule. This portion of the program brought to you by Call Corey. Get your direct decorative epoxy floor systems. Call them today. They're customer service focused, competitive pricing. They can epoxy your garage or your basement or patio. Serving Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Call Corey for quality asphalt seal coating, 401-283-9815. And remember, if you're a business owner, they could certainly seal coat your driveway. Crack sealing, line striping, asphalt patch repair makes a huge difference. Free estimate. Give them a call, 401-283-9815. This also explains, now remember, they were getting different ransom notes. But that would explain why Savannah had initially said that she believed that two of them were real. And keep in mind, same writing style, possibly from the same computer. The first one, to reiterate, suddenly, the first one asked for $4 million in crypto and came the day after. They're not asking for money. So, and then instead this business of, now, as much as they're saying what they were trying to say, I think it's still in dispute about the apology. But what you need to understand is the FBI greenlighted, yes, you can now put it out. So this is, if you watched my interview last week with the FBI agent face to face with Whitey Bulger, you know, they were always planning and trying to come up with different strategies. And with that case, one of the strategies they decided to try to come up with was, let's focus on Catherine Gregg. And then they put the information on her. So I think someone decided, let's release a little more information. I don't often go to things. I don't understand why not, Annie. I just explained. I'm not sure I could explain anymore. Who's the easier one to abduct? One person lives alone. One person, Annie could put up more of a fight. Annie lives with her husband and they have a child. And I just said their house is not as secluded. So Nancy was the easier target. I don't understand why not Annie. I just explained why not. Oh, I don't know what that means. Let me get to the KVOA, because they're the ones that received it. That's why you go for Nancy. Nancy's the easier target, despite what some people may think. But I'm saying there was someone saying, why was she chosen? I mean, to me, it's not even close. And as I've said, as someone that spent a considerable amount of time in that area, and I may spend more time there, is her house even stood out to me in the neighborhood because of where it was situated, because of the lack of lighting, because no alarm system, because no dog, and because she didn't have anyone directly next to her or across the street from her. This is KVOA.
The search for Nancy Guthrie. Today, new details are emerging about one of the ransom notes linked to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. FBI investigators examining the notes say it indicated the 84-year-old died during a kidnapping plot. We're also learning that this second note apparently contained no sort of apology and no further demand for money. Investigators also believe the note potentially did come from the person or people responsible for taking Nancy Guthrie. If you remember, the note was one of two messages.
By the way, that's me right there in the background. I was there that afternoon. I just saw myself. I've never seen this piece before. They captured me as I was live.
Sent to media outlets following her disappearance. NBC News previously also reported the first note requested something like cryptocurrency and also claimed Nancy was safe but scared. This comes as Savannah Guthrie later addressed both messages publicly, saying she believed those notes were credible. Despite the claims made in the messages, investigators have never confirmed Nancy Guthrie's whereabouts, and they continue to search for answers nearly 5 months after her disappearance. And as we do come to this portion of the story, Nancy Guthrie tip line still there. If
you know, again, I don't think people fully, and I get that, fully get that somebody felt, let's put out a little more information. Let's put out a little bit more. And we have been. I mean, we had heard about this, but it was never anything confirmed, by the way. There was never anything confirmed. But what is different about this new information is the fact that the FBI basically gave the go-ahead to the local TV station, or the local TV station, I should say, and then confirm things. And what I mean by that is, for instance, Aaron Katursky, who I know from ABC, he didn't say, when they're saying sources close to the investigation, that is that's coming from the FBI. So they're not naming the FBI. The FBI is not going on record. She is buried in nature now. She perished shortly after she was taken. Second ransom note sent to a Tucson TV station. Died after her abduction. Completely different note sent to TMZ said she's alive and frightened. The FBI has not confirmed which communication, if either, is real. And this is important because TMZ, their reporting is different than other media outlets. So TMZ was saying she's alive and frightened, but buried with nature. Some news outlets are reporting there was no apology. Brianna Whitney, with media reports surfacing some of the info, I'm sharing all the details, reading it myself. Confirmation of death shortly after she was taken, not intending to hurt her, not understanding her health conditions, believing her death was heart-related, burying her with nature, an apology saying there's nothing anyone could have done to change the outcome. But the fact of the matter is now we have a little bit of the difference between some outlets getting one piece of information. I don't know if the TMZ, if their ransom note that they did receive, we don't know, is it the same one? And what I mean by that is, the authorities have not said, yeah, those are the same ones. I know that some people have questioned, they should have paid. Why didn't they pay? Now, from what I understand, and we'll ask Jamie that. Jamie Copenhaver is going to join me coming up. But it's because they're viewed as terrorists. And then if you started doing this, let alone if they had paid the $4 million in crypto, there was no guarantee that you're ever going to see her alive again. There's no guarantee that you can track where the money went. So that seems to be, because I realize some people have said, if that was my family, I would do anything. But I think you have to look at, they're pushing the reward. They're pushing the reward and they're narrowing down by releasing this information. That this is clearer that this was a kidnapping gone wrong, not a burglary gone wrong. I'd heard about this more and more. There seem to be more clues that this is what makes sense, because it has never made sense, not only to me, but anyone, of if this was a burglary gone wrong, why would you take the person with you? If you take the person with you, remove her out of the house, you're increasing your risk, because now you have a body. So buried in nature, that strikes me as, so don't even bother looking for her. Now, we don't know if that is in fact the case, but what shouldn't be lost on people, and this is really important, there is still, that's right, time is no longer of the essence. No mention of buried in nature. See, that's odd, because there was one they were saying, there was one they were saying that she was frightened, but she was alive. And then suddenly, so which ones are we to believe? I also understand TMZ, that they were saying that they would pay, and that they would, they would involve themselves. But I can understand why the FBI was not in a hurry to jump on board with that. If you listen to the radio, you're going to hear the top of the hour news, and you're going to join us on the other side. Everyone else stays right here. I recognize, and it's a tough one. It's a tough one when you think, why wouldn't you just pay? But again, the way it was explained to me was because they view the kidnappers basically as terrorists. And let alone, as much as we say, what about proof of life? If you don't have that, and then you're just paying the money, there would be more kidnappings. There would be more kidnappings, not less. Not less, as a matter of fact. So now let me come back to, I was a little surprised at what we just saw with the new plea on the mom from the local station because so this is I want to just play the local because of I want to pull this up. And again, I get that some people don't understand the significance of it, but it's very significant, this information that's coming out now, only because they're allowing it to come out.
It's now since Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped from her Catalina Foothills home. And today, new details are emerging about one of the notes linked to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Our Monica Garcia joins us now in studio with more on what it suggests about the people responsible for taking her. Monica.
That's right, Sean. So today, like you said, these details that are emerging about one of those ransom notes linked to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. FBI investigators examining the note say it indicated the 84-year-old died during a kidnapping plot. We're also learning that this second note apparently contained no sort of apology and no further demand for money. Investigators also believe the note potentially did come from the person or people responsible for taking Nancy Guthrie. So if you remember, the note was one of two messages sent to media outlets following her disappearance. NBC News previously reported the first note did request cryptocurrency, and that first note claimed Nancy was safe but scared. Savannah Guthrie later addressed both of those notes publicly, saying she believed the notes were credible. Despite the claims made in the messages, investigators have never confirmed Nancy's whereabouts, and they, of course, as we've been telling you, continue to search for answers now nearly 5 months after her disappearance. And so as they do continue to search for...
Yeah, I don't, what do you guys think? I mean, to me, I recognize some people aren't going to get it. The more you walk through this to me just does make the most sense that we initially, there was a lot of speculation that it was a burglary gone wrong, but more and more it seemed to be more on that this was actually a kidnapping gone wrong. So that is now we understand why. Let me just pull this up. There we go.
5 months after a man in a mask showed up at Nancy Guthrie's front door and abducted her in the dark of night, ABC News can disclose the contents of a second note sent to a Tucson television station days later. The first note demanded a ransom, millions in cryptocurrency. Sources told ABC News the second note claimed Guthrie died shortly after she was taken and was buried in nature, something her daughter Savannah appeared to reference days later in this Instagram post.
We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace.
The FBI believes the two notes came from the same sender, but investigators have so far been unable to determine who that is. Savannah said she believed the notes were legitimate, but never gave up on her mother. Investigators are still working to identify the armed man seen lurking at Nancy Guthrie's front door. They're also testing a hair found at the home, along with a mixed DNA sample, hoping those clues will lead to the kidnapper.
There is still $1 million reward for information leading to Nancy Guthrie's recovery. And guys, as Savannah has pleaded with her captor, it's never too late to do the right thing.
The fact that what also just stands out to me is none of the tips that came in amounted to anything. That's a really small circle. I realize I could be in the minority, but this could be lone wolf. This could absolutely be because, there's a local case that I'm trying to get more information on and put more info, out. And one of the things about it, and it involves a woman, Louise, who was killed in her home in North Providence, Rhode Island. And it happened in December of 23. And she was discovered, I think she was discovered December 20th, excuse me. So someone got into her home and, I believe shot her and even left the handgun there. But what people need to realize is one person can keep a secret. The more you start to include people, and it's not only keep a secret, it could be that that they just, they start acting peculiar, or if it's two guys and one of them breaks up with the girlfriend, and what happens? Then they're angry, and then they start saying, he left, he was gone. Folks, this portion of our program, right now we're live on AM 1380, 99.9 FM. You can always listen online at our website, depetro.com. We're also live on Facebook and YouTube and X. We are going to be joined by my friend, Jamie Copenhaver at the former law enforcement, at the bottom half of the hour. But there's a lot here, and I want to come back to a lot of the focus has been on nanos. A lot of the focus of recent note, by the way, has been, blah, 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 nanos. And this is different. This is the FBI doing their thing. I recognize that some people may not realize that, but I'm telling you, in just the way it's being reported. So people have had some of this information, and now they finally got the go-ahead, yes, you can release it. I want to play again. This is the Today Show.
Coming out regarding the ongoing investigation into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. According to 3 people familiar with the matter, the second of 2 notes sent to media outlets from an alleged kidnapper following the 84-year-old's disappearance indicated that Nancy had died. The note made no further.
I want to just quickly address something. The whole purpose of the investigation is to solve the investigation. There's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking going on. I want to remind people, the FBI, they have, the people working this have tremendous experience. This whole business of why did they wait to release it, blah, blah, blah. There's a strategy to it. You don't release everything all at once. I want to remind people, the FBI agents that are working this is not about some of the foolishness that's been going on. There's one end game here. Solve the investigation. What? None of that stuff, see this? None of that stuff matters. The only thing that matters is finding out who abducted her. You have to think beyond the noise and the foolishness that has been going on. This isn't about nanos. A lot of people, all this second guessing. Why did they listen? They have experience. They know what they're doing. This armchair quarterbacking is insanity. There's a method to it. It may not just be readily apparent to people. Let's hear this.
A request for money. Shortly after it was sent, Savannah and her siblings sharing this video, speaking directly to whoever took their beloved mom.
We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
That second note coming days after media outlets received an initial alleged ransom note indicating that Nancy was safe and demanding $6 million in Bitcoin in exchange for her release. NBC News has previously reported on both notes, but the contents of that second note have not been made public until now.
Not made public until now. That means it's new information, and it is. That is the FBI deciding to put out the information.
Investigators involved in the case believe the notes are potentially credible, a sentiment shared by Savannah during her interview with Hoda.
I believe the 2 notes that we received, that we responded to, I tend to believe those are real.
Who's behind those notes is still unknown.
I want to also just point out to people that so much of this, the real activity was in the very beginning. The real activity was happening in the first 7 to 10 days of this whole episode. Not recently, not with people going after Nanos and fighting this other foolishness. This is when whoever this was and is then dropped silent. So, but just, keep in mind the real focal point, the real time that things were happening was really in the very, very beginning. I remember when I was there when the FBI hostage negotiators, came flying in. So, this was the elite team, and actually even sent by the White House. They spared no expense. But all this second guessing going on and foolishness and nonsense and give it a rest already. People pointing the finger at the family. There's so much noise. Focus on what's important. This stuff is new and it's important. New and important. I want to just replay this. I want to, maybe some people don't fully get this. This is NBC News's report. Okay. Do you think they're putting out something that's not? Although I just picked up on something that is somewhat conflicting. Is this, it could be small, it may not matter, but this business about an apology. But focus on the time frame. Focus on the time frame, because that's what they're focused on. It's not this other circus foolishness that took over the last couple of weeks.
Kidnapper, following the 84-year-old's disappearance, indicated that Nancy had died. The note made no further request for money.
We've never heard that before. That they immediately got something saying that she had died.
Shortly after it was sent, Savannah and her siblings sharing this video, speaking directly to whoever took their beloved mom.
We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
That second note coming days after media outlets received an initial.
One thing I do want to mention, the video that Savannah just put out, or that they just played on Instagram, that was the Saturday night, February 7th. And Nanos was at the basketball game when that video came out. All right, I'll admit that. I'm not a defender of his by any means, but that's when things were really, happening.
Alleged ransom note indicating that Nancy was safe and demanding $6 million in Bitcoin in exchange for her release.
Now, see, this is different. They're saying $6 million. Then you have another ransom note saying $4 million.
NBC News has previously
I admit it's confusing.
Reported on both notes, but the contents of that second note have not been made public until now. Investigators involved in the case believe the notes are potentially credible, a sentiment shared by Savannah during her interview with Hoda.
I believe the 2 notes that we received, that we responded to, I tend to believe those are real.
Who's behind those notes is still unknown, as is the identity of that masked armed man captured on Nancy's doorbell camera in the early morning hours when she was taken. Savannah recently opening up to Jenna about the agony she feels every day.
I cry every morning on the way to work, and I cry every morning on the way home. And I'm grateful to have good friends and to be able to come to such a beautiful and joyous and supportive place. And like so many people out there, you can hold all of these things together. I try to tell my kids that too, you know, we can hold our sadness and we can hold our joy. And just, if you don't believe it, just watch me. I'm going to show you.
And despite these new details, unfortunately, Craig, there is still no major update or break in the case. Investigators are still searching for that masked man and trying to find a match with some of the DNA that they uncovered at the home. Craig.
All right, Liz Force there in California. Liz, thank you. The bravery and courage
This is
with
this
which
morning.
you have done this job every day since that happened, nothing short of remarkable.
Well,
nothing short of remarkable.
I love you guys and I love this place. And this is unusual and unprecedented, to say the least, to be sitting here. But, you know, I don't have any comment on the story, and I'm not involved in our coverage. But I can't pretend I'm not here. And so since I am, I wanted to just take the opportunity to ask people, to beg people to come forward so we know something. And this is a news story today that is on your radar, but this is the life that my sister lives, that I live, that my brother lives, that our extended families live, that our children live every day. And we are in agony. And we cannot be at peace. So no matter how much I try to come out here every day and smile and find that joy, and I will, I promise I will. This is a moment to tell you that we need your help. We're begging for your help. And I'm not going to miss that opportunity. And so please, if you're watching, no matter how small, the reward is there. You can tell us. It can be anonymous. Please do the right thing for us, for our family, for our children. And we love our mom, and we'll never stop looking for her. Never.
To your point, if you have any information, if you're watching, if you're listening, if you have any information.
Wow. You know, there's something also, it's very significant if we're to believe, we're going to talk to Jamie about this coming up, but it sure sounds as though we have motive. The motive was, and it's kind of what we have touched on and danced around, and we've talked about that for a while. You know, since this whole thing, the FBI are very professional. They are. You know, there's different. Why release it now? We don't know. They don't show all their cards. They don't show all their cards. So, and I only say that of there are examples. For instance, there's a law enforcement agency right now that I'm dealing with on a homicide. And I think they could put out a lot more information. I even tried, I'm trying to work with them. I'm trying to help them develop a timeline. They're not used to homicides. They're giving like no information. It doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't affect this, but we have motive, right? Every crime since the very beginning, what have we been asking is what was the motive here? And we've heard everything from Epstein. Who stood to gain? Epstein. Who stood to gain? Inside job, Epstein. Right? I'll never forget that afternoon, someone saying Nancy's on Epstein's island. Epstein, who stood to gain? You know, inside job, all code. Motive means an opportunity. Who had the means? Well, this person had the means. And as much as people have said clowns and everything, we still don't know who that is. And they were able to do that. Remember, no phone pinged. No GPS was struck, and we have no vehicle that they're looking for. So, means, they certainly had the means. Late at night, at least one person, maybe more. We don't know. They had the means. They also have, you know, weapon, the gloves, the whole thing. Is that, you know, we don't know about that DNA. Is that real? Still unknown. Did they have the opportunity? Old woman living alone with no alarm, no dog in a very secluded neighborhood. And then what was the motive? If we are to believe the ransom note information that has been put out, it is in fact, it was money, and they wanted the Bitcoin. So I don't know what to make of, you know, there's just no end to some of the foolishness. Folks, and I want to stay on schedule. We are going to talk to Jamie, but this, by all accounts, points to nothing other than that it was someone came up with that we can kidnap this lady. I want to remind you about Capitol Fence. You know, I have mentioned the fact at the very least at her home, if they had, you know, various gates and so forth, with Capitol Fence, You can protect yourself and your family. Call owner Mike Rizzo today at Capital Fence, 401-618-4407. Fence and Gate, most trusted for privacy and security, serving Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Repair and maintenance, highest quality, will last for years. Call owner Mike Rizzo. Look for them on social media, Capital Fence. Call them today, 401-618-4407. It is heartbreaking. It is absolutely heartbreaking to hear that. But that should not be lost on people. This is very significant about the decision to make it public of what was in those ransom notes. And this is also, I remember early on saying that if it was real, that you would think right out of the box that they would be, they would have gone into the house and seen, we have Nancy, here's the information, and good luck, trying to get her back and so forth. And we haven't heard that. So, but the next day is seemingly when that they received that first ransom note that wanted, the Bitcoin. This really strikes me as this was a kidnapping gone wrong, and the motive they basically stole her, feeling that they could get away with it. So not that I saw some of that. That is just I found that stuff ridiculous. I did. So I know the conspiracy people, but I don't subscribe to a lot of that. I'm not gonna actually give it any oxygen because that whole thing of someone was trying to start a thing. It was homeless people that kidnapped her. I mean, that I don't know where that no one else has that. No one has that. I want to go through some of the details again because this is, I know, Aaron, they have a direct pipeline. They have really strong sources with the feds.
5 months after a man in a mask showed up at Nancy Guthrie's front door and abducted her in the dark of night, ABC News can disclose the contents of a second note sent to a Tucson television station days later. The first note demanded a ransom, millions in cryptocurrency. Sources told ABC News the second note claimed Guthrie died shortly after she was taken and was buried in nature, something her daughter...
I noticed that they're saying millions in crypto. They're not nailing it down on that. And I did see Brian Enton did a video last night, and okay. I want to check. And they I'm just picking up that there seems to be some discrepancy in exactly, was it 4 million or 6 million? So I think that's interesting. Now, the station that did receive it, I want to just check their report because they are actually the ones that they were the ones that, okay. How long is that? Are they just doing the CBS thing? No, I want to, let me pull this. Let me play this. This is the KOLD. They're the ones that actually, I believe, their news director received the ransom notes.
Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today Show co-anchor Savannah, missing now since February 1st. Over the months, the FBI has taken seriously at least 2 notes tied to the case, including one that claimed Nancy Guthrie had died. CBS News correspondent Jonathan Vigliotti has the details.
This is the only way we will have peace.
Tonight, we're revealing the contents of a note Savannah Guthrie was responding to in this video recorded on February 7th during the search for her kidnapped mother, Nancy.
We received your message and we understand.
Sources tell CBS News the note, believed to have come from her alleged kidnapper, claimed Nancy Guthrie was dead.
We beg you now to return our mother to us.
The message was the second of 2 notes sent to the family in the first week following Nancy Guthrie's kidnapping on February 1st. The first note was sent 1 day after a doorbell camera captured this masked man appearing to tamper with the camera in the moment before Guthrie vanished. It demanded millions of dollars in crypto.
Now, see, they're saying $4 million. They're saying $4 million, and they're one of the stations that got it. I saw someone say, why is he playing? I'm not playing the same clip over and over. I'm demonstrating that there's different reporting going on. You know, one says 6 million, the other says 4 million. So I'm not playing the same thing over and over. You pick up little things by kind of playing them out.
Currency in exchange for Nancy Guthrie's return. The Guthrie family responded, initially hopeful she was alive. Instead, that second message arrived. The family took both notes seriously because they were written in the same language and style and came from the same computer address, according to several sources. Investigators are treating both notes as credible.
Now they're playing the, they are a CBS affiliate, but they are, in fact, one of the stations, the local station that actually did receive one of the notes. So I'm just saying it is, I don't know if confusing. There's definitely the FBI wanted it to be known about this latest. I mean, they're making this public. And now Nanos is not. So I'm not going to get into, people trying to come up with their own. I'm big on you follow the investigation. That's what I do. You follow where the investigation is. These people coming up with their own theories or trying to make it about something else. It's really not. There's really one theme here. But motive, and I saw, I don't want to draw too much attention to it, but someone like this is all still, how can you still say it's about Jeffrey Epstein? Who was doing it then? Epstein's dead. There is no island. There's no, what are you talking about? Epstein did it to distract. But what? I don't like to get down the rabbit hole. I don't. By the way, I also want to mention happy birthday to Robin, one of our great mods. I apologize. It was yesterday, but happy birthday to Robin. And she's just such a valuable part of our operation. Folks, I do want to remind you about Watson Materials. Call them today. Call Sean, 401-885-0600. Landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone, Watson Materials, 401-885-0600. Really makes a difference in your outside. It's Watson Materials. What is so significant about this, and also I get it. There are some people, they love the conspiracy stuff. They love just then coming up and fueling into other things. But the timeline here is really important when this was going down. And the fact that they are letting everyone know about that, meaning, and what do I mean by that? What I mean is it's the FBI is, there he is. Folks, what a treat we have on this Monday. So good to see him. And we're going to bring him on right now. He is nothing short of brilliant, retired law enforcement. We got the chance to speak to him when I was out in the Catalina foothills, Jamie Copenhaver. And Jamie joins us now. First of all, so good to see you, my friend. And
good to see you, JD. Glad to be with you. Thank you.
There's a lot of consistent info that's come out. Some of it is conflicting a little bit, but I want to just get some of your initial thoughts on, to me, none of this would be public if the FBI didn't make the decision to, okay, we're going to confirm this. We're going to let the TV station who had the note, let them make it public. We're willing to let some of this information go public. I want to hear some of your thoughts on these recent developments with the ransom notes.
Well, first of all, we still have no transparency, John, from the Pima County Sheriff himself, Chris Nanos. He's yet to come out publicly and speak on any of the above, and he hasn't for several months.
Yes.
As you said, had it not been for the FBI, I don't think we would have this information.
No.
You know, there were questions, John, in terms of these ransom letters. Were they authentic? Were they fake? And they had to be debunked by law enforcement. I think the FBI carried the heavy load on debunking those, John, because we're learning now that they sent a text or a test of currency or Bitcoin to one of those ransom letters to see if they could actually sort of ring the bell, if you will, to be able to track where that Bitcoin was going. So had it not been for the FBI, I don't think we would know any of this.
What does it tell us that, I mean, we're learning now that this information of them demanding several million of Bitcoin, it came right out of the box. I want to go off the CBS reporting because their station is KOLD in Tucson, and CBS through that is reporting that it was 4 million in crypto, and they believed that 2 of the notes they received were basically written the same way and possibly came from the same computer.
You and I spoke about that.
Yep.
This is just my opinion, John. When the FBI data collection team arrived on the scene, I think they took charge of all of the communications with the assistance of the family. I don't think the sheriff's office was too cooperative during the beginning, and we've heard rumors of that, right? But the FBI had to go back and do what they could do in terms of trying to trace, to legitimize, or to pluck out of the pool fake ransom letters. So, I mean, they did all the heavy lifting on this. And here's something that I really want to hone in on. We saw those pleas from Savannah.
Yes.
They certainly looked scripted. And now we're learning the FBI actually was a part of the communication to the abductors to try to appeal to their human side to at least let Nancy's body go.
Jamie, what do you make of the timing of this? That obviously the TV station, they've been sitting on the information. A lot of, the FBI off the record, all the major networks going forward with this. Let's just say Aaron Kaczynski, ABC News, they're not going to put this out unless they have it solid on background, people familiar with the investigation. They're not going to get the FBI on the record. Any thought as to why right now that they've decided to let's put that information out there, that what was in these ransom notes?
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend, John. We're in 2026. Why can't we trace the IP addresses or MAC addresses to pin down an address for that server, right?
Yeah.
So here's my thought on that. I think we're hearing about this second ransom letter and those horrible descriptions of she's unalived accidentally, buried with nature. I think we're hearing that now 140 days plus into her abduction. They are out of leads. They have nowhere to go in this case.
Yep.
I don't think they've developed any suspects, and they certainly don't, John, in my opinion, have a starting point for any type of search to try to recover the body of Nancy Guthrie. So I think we're hearing about it now to try to get it back in the news cycle to perhaps generate someone to talk.
Yeah, I agree with you. And what do you make of, Jamie, that apparently in the second ransom note, now again, there's 2 of them that they believe were real, that Savannah, I mean, for Savannah saying, I think 2 of them were real, and it's these 2, I mean, that would lead me to believe she's depending on law enforcement to tell her, that they believe it's legitimate. But in the second one, they weren't actually asking for money. They was more just almost to inform the family that she was no longer alive and the whole quote buried in nature.
Yeah, I mean, we all speculated. I did early on, John, when that second interview out, or that plea from Savannah, that we just paraphrasing here now. We understand, we hear you. We just want to be able to celebrate her life. I mean, John, that was a pretty good clue that Nancy Guthrie was no longer with us, and definitely, in my opinion, when Savannah made that plea, the family certainly was privy of that second ransom letter, and they pretty much knew she was unalived at that point. But like I said, we're just now really hearing about it weeks and months later. John, we're 140 days plus into this case. I don't think they're any closer to solving the case nor finding the body of Nancy Guthrie. And that's probably the most disturbing part of this entire journey. Where are the answers? Where is law enforcement? And I'm going to go out on a limb. Why hasn't the FBI taken a larger role publicly in this case to get some volunteer search groups in to try to at least make an attempt of finding the body of Nancy Guthrie?
Yeah. No, excellent point. We know there was that very large organization, Cajun and so forth. They were getting nowhere with the sheriff's office. That's interesting, Jamie, about if the FBI took the lead. Do you think does this now answer? I mean, since you and I have been chatting since the very beginning, it was coming back to motive. What I find interesting is, initially we're hearing a burglary going wrong, but the way that they're treating these ransom notes, this sure sounds as though this was an abduction, kidnapping that went wrong.
I absolutely will discount until I'm proved otherwise, John. This wasn't a burglary going wrong. Think about it. You have an elderly woman in the middle of the night, presumably sleeping. If you're a burglar, you go in and do the home invasion. The old woman, air quotes, wakes up. John, you're going to be able to outrun her.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to get out of the house. You're not going to abduct her during a burglary going wrong. So it comes back down to motive. I think it's going to be finances. I think it's going to be cold, hard greed. And then it leads you to the question, who's involved? And we know that, you always look at family, friends, service workers first, and you start eliminating those individuals out of the suspect pool. What concerns me to this day, John, if I can speak candid and freely, they made multiple trips. And I'm not implying these individuals are involved, but multiple trips to Annie Guthrie's home. Something just doesn't ring true with the multiple trips, the photographing, the luminol. It's concerning to me. And we're certainly not implicating anyone, but we saw that play out, John.
Yeah. And they had the car for a long time. I mean, that's all true. We've never gotten an explanation of what were they taking out in the bags. Jamie, I'd like you to play it out. Let's just go to, I mean, if the information is correct, that Monday, they get, the first ransom note, and they're saying they have her. And I believe it was also reported that they provided that the floodlight in the back was out. I also heard reporting that they gave a pretty accurate, they gave a description of what she was wearing when she was abducted, and that they wanted, I don't know, several million in crypto, whether it was 4 million in crypto or 6 million in crypto. It seems to be a little bit in dispute. But if you're the FBI and the family says, what should we do? So that first, day, and they get the ransom note, we have her. What would law enforcement, take us through? What would go on with that? And then the perils of paying or the perils of not paying?
I mean, it's been a standard, John, with the FBI for years, not to pay these ransoms. If you have a hostage situation, you don't pay the ransoms. It's going to cause copycats. You're going to have repeat offenders for that. So it's been a standing policy from the feds. We're not paying the ransom. What I do believe, though, and this is encouraging, the FBI, I think, took all of those letters seriously, John, all the communications, until they didn't, meaning either they were debunked or not. Let's not forget the individuals out in California who were actually arrested and charged for sending fake letters. So it was certainly there, right? So unfortunately, it's painstaking to go and track down the IP address, the MAC address, to try to pinpoint where that ransom letter was sent from. We know it was a device, presumably a computer, from what I'm hearing. I think the most confusing part, John, we're in 2026. We have a lot of technology. It's just mind-boggling. They can't find a location where these letters originated from.
Yeah.
And it's just, I can't wrap my head around that part.
Jamie, it also sounds with these ransom notes that, boy, there was a lot of activity going on behind the scenes in the first few hours of this investigation. And, you know, my understanding and what I remember about those first few days was that there was a lot of confusion. That the sheriff's office was already kind of setting up their kind of a turf battle, and I wonder, was the FBI fully privy to all the information that they were receiving in those crucial first several days is what I meant.
I'm going to say absolutely not. I do not think the Pima County Sheriff elected to share all of that information with the FBI during the first 3 to 5 days.
Yep.
And John, I mean, let's go back in history and visit that, and let's qualify why I think that. You have a national crime lab at Quantico, the best premier crime lab in the world, and yet Chris Nanos elects to send it to an independent lab in Florida rather than cooperating with the FBI and the National Crime Lab. That was the first sign of, hey, they're going to block the feds at all costs. And, they ended up moving everything to Phoenix in a warehouse so everyone would be housed under one building, if you will.
Right.
So all that information could be going through by not only the FBI, but also detectives from the Pima County. But John, here's what really sticks in my mind. You have a very young homicide unit at the Pima County Sheriff's Department, very little experience. You have a supervisor supervising the homicide squad, John. It's my understanding he had zero experience, and he was put into that position by Chris Nanos. And I just think it was set up from day one to fail, not intentionally, but by egos and hey, I'm in charge, I'm the sheriff, we're doing it my way.
What do you make of, Jamie, that they're basically saying they have not received, of all the tips that have come in, thousands of tips? I've heard it's over 40,000. Not one tip has panned out. What does that tell you about who's responsible here?
Well, I'm going to give that credit directly to yourself and other content creators that were out there in the field every day for weeks and months.
Yeah.
John, I thoroughly believe, I just discussed this with someone else, had it not been for you and your fellow streamers, I think this would have been out of the news cycle long before it was. So I'm going to give you credit for that.
Thank you.
But also, I'm going to give you credit for another thing. Those streamers, yourself included, I believe were responsible for generating tips to Pima County and the FBI based on your coverage nonstop of the Nancy Guthrie case. So I've got to give yourself and your partners credit for that. I think you guys assisted. But here's the deal, 30, 40,000 tips, none of them panned out. That tells me that a lot of people were trying to help call in tips with whatever information they have. It just wasn't actionable, if you will. With a caveat, John, may I expand?
Yeah, of course.
My concern is you have a sheriff, and I'm going to go right back to Chris Nanos, who wants to be in charge. He wants to be the star. John, how much effort were actually put into those 30 or 40,000 tips? Was the correct effort put into them? Did they actually do the correct follow-up?
Yep.
And has something been missed based on overlooking them with an inexperienced homicide squad? That's concerning.
I think it's interesting how, because you're echoing, I spoke with a former FBI this morning, granted just on the phone, but he said, no, we don't pay if you pay. A lot of people would say, oh, they should have paid, but he was saying, no, if you pay, that they view kidnappers like terrorists. You don't negotiate with terrorists. If you pay, it, as you say, it leads to copycat. There's no guarantee you're even going to get her remains back, let alone her alive. So I think that's interesting that a lot of people don't fully get that what would happen if suddenly, sight unseen, people forget about proof of life, but if people just started paying out huge amounts of money, that I think, Jimmy, you'd create a criminal network of people that this is what they would start to do.
Well, we saw that in real time with the Nancy Guthrie case. You had
Yes.
the individual out in California that was arrested and charged for that very crime of greed and trying to cash in on poor Nancy Guthrie. So, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely the policy. We're not paying the ransom. Here's a caveat, though. It's pretty well common knowledge, and it's, of my opinion, they in fact sent something to that Bitcoin wallet as a test.
Yes.
Not only to see if it would go through, but to see if they could track where the Bitcoin landed. So we know they sent something as a test. And John, I don't know, did that upset the abductors and they just cut out all communications and said, hey, they're trying to track us? So I really don't have a good read on, did it really hamper the investigation by sending that test Bitcoin payment? That's a possibility.
Is it possible that they are watching someone? And part of putting this information out now, what people need to understand is they've had it. The television station that received it, they agreed with the FBI not to release the contents of it. But is it possible that they're monitoring someone and they want to see how they're going to react when this information comes out?
I guess at heart, John, I'm a true Boy Scout and I want to believe, and I want to agree with that. I don't think so. I truly don't think that's the case. I think if they had a suspect in mind or suspects, they're going to go up and do surveillance. They're going to do digital surveillance. They're going to know every time those individuals leave or go or eat. Could this be a ruse to maybe get them out, to get them moving? Possibly. But at the end of the day, we're not hearing any official word from law enforcement.
No.
Chris Nandos is mute. He's been mute for several months. So here's my answer to that. If this was some type of ruse, you would certainly think law enforcement would be out doing a press conference on the, quote, second ransom letter of her being unalive to garner that attention.
Sure. And also, it's interesting you say that, Jamie. They haven't published it. The FBI, that's an excellent point. I haven't heard anyone mention. The FBI could have a press conference where they put up on the screen, this is what we got. Does anyone recognize it? I covered the Boston Marathon bombing, when they put out, these are two individuals, that seemed to arrive. They kind of worked together, but then they split up. That put things in motion. You think of, or I do, the Unabomber. I mean, what really solved that case was when they did publish the manifesto, and then the brother of Ted Kaczynski, brother Chicago, was like, hey, I know who wrote that, but that looks like what my brother used to write. So I wonder, is it possible that this could lead to FBI press briefing and boom, we all get to see up on the big screen, this is the two notes we received. Does anyone recognize the writing?
It's a valid point, and let me expand on that. We very seldom hear the FBI doing pressers. It just doesn't happen unless it's the Boston bombing, the Unabomber case. And this is a missing persons case, right?
Yes.
I think the missing persons case is an unaliving case. We can confirm that. It's garnered national attention. John, there's a potential of her being out of the United States in Mexico. There were some rumors of that.
Yep.
So I think this is an ideal case where the FBI could go before the public, do a press conference, put exactly up on the screen what you just described, this ransom letter, and let the public see it. I think, number one, it would put pressure on the bad guys, John.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the public knows exactly, do they recognize the style of the writing? We all have a certain style of way we articulate in our writing. And someone may notice that, just like they did in the Unibarber case. So, you know, I pro law enforcement, John, but shame on all the above for not taking a more proactive stance and getting out before the public, being a little bit more transparent, and appealing for the people's help. Do you recognize this style of writing? Here's what we have. We need your help.
Yeah, and Nanos, it is still his investigation, and as you said, he's on lockdown. He's really only been communicating with local Tucson television stations, very, very limited interviews. He doesn't do any big interviews. Jamie, do you have any thoughts? Has your concept of how many abductors could have been involved, has that been altered or changed because they have been so silent, and we still just have the one individual who, you know, that they captured on the Nest camera?
My opinion, based on everything we've seen, I mean, I like to call the guy at the front porch the creepy video guy.
Yep.
We see him up there with the foliage rubbing across the camera. I don't think that's the main player in this. I think, John, this is just my opinion. I think that home invasion occurred into the Nancy Guthrie home.
Yep.
I think a argument, or it became violent or physical at one point, and she was accidentally unalived in that house. To answer your question, I think there were two people at the house. And John, let's not forget, that's a dark, desolate highway or road out there. You're
Yes.
going to have a car to get away in. So I think you have two in the house, and I think you have a driver once they get the goods into the car and they can flee the area. So my guess, there are three individuals involved.
Hmm. Finally, Jamie, first of all, it's great, so great to talk to you. Any other thoughts that you have on the ransom, where we are in the investigation? What about the fact that I think it's interesting that, you know, if we're to believe the second ransom note that they seem to give a lot of credibility to, it's not a ha, you know, she's gone. This business of buried with nature, what I mean is they weren't trying to still get money at that point. At that point, it was essentially, it seemed as though they were, you know, letting the Guthries know, like, this whole negotiation is over. She's no longer with us. I think, you know, there's some reporting that somebody put something like nothing could have been done. Notice they didn't say they killed her, that she just, you know, died as she was with them. But what do you make of that aspect of it?
I mean, at the end of the day, she's a grandma. She's
Yeah.
Savannah and Annie's mother. You certainly, as an abductor, would have some type of heart and sympathy for that family. And you want to afford a way to release the remains back to the family. Which, John, you really need to talk to a psych or a wizard on this, because here's my, I don't have a shingle as a psychologist, but here's where I read into that. This was not like the cartel or some hardcore criminal. I'm going to suggest to you it's going to come back to family, friends, service workers, what have you, because they too were somewhat sorry for her unaliving accidentally.
Yep.
And they wanted to relay that to the family. John, if you're a hardcore kidnapper or a criminal or a cartel member and your subject passes away, end of story, end of the negotiations, there's
Right.
no deal to be made, move
Right.
on to your next target. This tells me
Yeah.
it's someone that has a connection to this family, John, based on that second ransom letter.
That's
if
a
the
good
wording is
point.
true.
Wow. Like, why even communicate that? Why not
Right.
just, you know,
Move on.
end of story? One last thing, Jamie. Last week, I interviewed Rich T, and he's the FBI agent that caught Whitey Bulger, and he has a new book out, Face to Face with Whitey Bulger. He sat on the plane with him from LA to Boston, 6 hours, and just that was his one chance, asking questions, prepping him. But what was the deciding element of that was for so long they focused on Whitey Bulger, this criminal, notorious murderer from Massachusetts, and then they realized, he had been on the run with this woman, Catherine Gregg, and it was Rich and his team that suddenly pivoted, and they put the focus on, this is what Catherine Gregg probably looks like. Have you seen her? She would dye her hair. She liked pets. And that's ended up what solved the case. So I just wonder if if they're not there yet, but I just wonder, any thought in your mind what could be pivotal to eventually getting at least a suspect on the radar with this case?
I mean, with all the data geofencing that they've allegedly done with cell phones and signals, I mean, they certainly should have a good data footprint of who was in the area at that time of the abduction. Secondly, we know that they visited multiple locations, stores, a Circle K. They had a particular interest in early on in the investigation of surveillance video.
Yes.
Even the sheriff himself came out and said they had a couple of vehicles that were questionable they were looking at. So I certainly think they have something. Here's my hope, John, and I'm kind of throwing the line out fishing. Given the wording in that second ransom letter, basically an apology for her not being with us any longer, will that person eventually speak or talk to someone to get it off of their chest? And maybe that would possibly be the break in the case, because it does sound like they're sympathetic to Nancy's unaliving, and they certainly sound sympathetic to the family losing their mother. So a lot of cases, you have to tell someone what happened, John. I think that's going to be the big break in the case when that happens.
That is an excellent point. And even just the wording of she's buried with nature. I mean, that could have been, that almost gives off like a peaceful image to someone, as opposed to she is at the bottom of a pit, or, we put her in a dumpster or something. I mean, don't like this is it. No more communication. She is gone. She's buried with nature. Almost like, don't worry, we took care of it. And so, Jamie, how can people follow your great work?
John, I'm on TikTok, real Jamie Copenhaver on TikTok. And that's my only platform. I have a Facebook page, but I spend all my time on TikTok. I love the community. And John, that's where I met you. So I'm forever grateful.
It is so good to see and talk to you. It is, Jamie. Keep up the good work, and I'll see you on TikTok.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
All right, Jamie. Folks, isn't he just, I mean, the guy is just brilliant. There he is, Jamie Copenhaver, right here on the John DePietro Show. Now, I do believe we're going to be live later tonight. I think there's still a lot to go through. And I also want to be very clear. I'm not opposed to people putting out speculation. I have seen people say maybe it was a worker. I mean, I think that stuff is fair. Where I start to break off a little bit is when people start to go in, admittedly, she's on Epstein's island. It's all tied to Epstein. It's all a distraction and that type of thing. It could have been a former worker. It could be. I mean, we don't know, as a matter of fact. We still don't know who this is. So, no, hold on. That's not the one. We still don't know who the individual is that showed up there. But I am more inclined to, as much as people want to dismiss this individual as amateur hour and everything else, we still don't know who it is. This person, did they have someone with them? We don't know. But at least what we do know is this individual, who was the person sending the ransom notes that they believe are legit. Jamie raised so many good points about where they are in the investigation, that they made the decision to make this public. And I want people to also recognize that it's the FBI that is putting that out there. Thank you. I appreciate that. You may see me there sometime, undetermined at this point, undetermined. But I mentioned earlier, one of the neighbors who's away for the summer, they very generously offered if I wanted to stay in their home and go back out. I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. If you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the top of the hour news. To everyone else, I will be back later. We're going to do another live stream late afternoon, early evening about this as we're getting more developments. So thank you to Jamie. Thank you, everybody. Make sure you follow this YouTube page, follow on Facebook, and we continue the search for Nancy Guthrie.